So, former Senator Rick Santorum, well, former Senator and CNN contributor, and that's the part that we care about more at the very least for the conversation of this video. But former Senator, former presidential runner for the Republican Party, he was trying to, I forget who he was trying to take down. I believe it was McCain, if I'm not mistaken. He was running against trying to take on Obama. But besides the fact, Rick Santorum is probably best known as a CNN commentator these days. And as a CNN commentator, the guy who was basically a far-right one has now been main-shot into the mainstream. Now, the interesting thing here is I'm one of those people who think that just because a person says something untoward doesn't mean they should be taken off the air. That within the context of America discourse, you're going to have people saying all sorts of things that are to the far right and on some level to the far left. Yes, I would say that the far right especially is worse in our political discourse, since the left in this country has been basically neutered. The far left is basically just random left in other countries. But in this very specific instance, Rick Santorum, CNN, given his point of view and his take on the various issues. So what happens when Rick Santorum gets out and says something that is untoward from CNN's perspective? How does CNN deal with it? Now, there's a lot of calls to have Rick Santorum pulled off for comments that he made about Native Americans, basically saying that none of their effect is here now that we've got here, and we did it all from scratch. White Christian males did it all from scratch. Now, he didn't say that for white Christian males, but basically that's what he's saying. And that the Native Americans played no role. Well, Rick, the Native Americans played no role because you, white Christians, as you want to call it, wiped them out. You committed a basic genocide. And so within the context of the statement is problematic just because of implications. But more to the point, though, the statement is not even entirely true. I mean, part of the governmental structure of America on some level was taken from the Iroquois and directly influenced the framers of this Constitution. Maybe not necessarily as much as Rome, but definitely in the way of forming the government. But nevertheless, I'm going to let Rick Santorum make his own case. The point of this video, though, is the response from other members of CNN, Don Lemon specifically, but also Chris Cuomo. Cuomo brings Rick Santorum on for a conversation. Basically, Rick, you need to explain yourself. And Rick Santorum dutifully does just that. Tries to explain himself. Don Lemon comes on after to talk to Chris Cuomo. And Don Lemon looks like he's about to break down into tears. He looks like he's about to break down into tears. I can't believe he said that. I can't believe he said that. White male Christians, an apology of an apology. No, what do you say? A whitewash of a whitewash of something that they whitewash. And on that front, he is absolutely right. I'm just making the point that Don Lemon needs to calm down a little bit. He seems to be getting a little into the story. But nevertheless, Don Lemon is not necessarily wrong in his assessment of this. And that's what I want to show. I want to show Rick. I want to show CNN trying to basically deal with this issue. And then Don Lemon at the very end to basically nearly weep his heart out. The thing here is, though, the people who are pushing for Rick Santorum to get off the air, think about where that ends. If everybody who somebody in the population didn't like gets kicked off of radio, social media, or whatever else, you basically have a world of lemmings and singular discourse. And I think that is one of the most unraveling things to a democracy, especially if you're trying to keep that democracy that you can get. Yes, Rick Santorum is a screwball. No, the statement wasn't, at least by my assessment, anywhere near something that should have got him kicked off the air. And I'm one of those people that didn't believe the other people, Mark Lamont and some of the other people that were kicked off the air, people of color, coincidentally, got kicked off the air for what I would consider to be less or equal to what they're complaining about Rick Santorum about. If you didn't think it was right to kick Lamont and the other guys off the air, then you can't necessarily entirely complain about getting him kicked off the air, Rick Santorum. Yes, he's a screwball, but your Uncle Charlie gets across that there's a screwball in pretty much every family, if not multiples. Rick Santorum is no different. And him being on the nightly news, I'm telling you, he's speaking to somebody. And I would rather Santorum be on that news and have somebody opposing Rick Santorum that makes Santorum look like an idiot as opposed to Santorum being banished away into the crevices of some of the social media site where a large number of Santorums can aggregate and try to take over the world from a base. I would rather Santorum and people like him be out in the public where he can make that particular point of view, where that point of view can be crashed or crushed by the person that's on set with him. No, I am not for this notion that just because you don't like something that somebody says, that the person should be banished into the cellar. There are always going to be things that you don't particularly like. There's going to be things that I don't particularly like. People saying that I may think are racist and sexist and bigoted or this and that. Are they those things because I think it so? Is there an objective standard by which something is any of those things? I would imagine at some point you get into a where it's pretty clear that it is, but in many respects what you get is subjectivity. No, I don't think Rick Santorum should be kicked off the air. No, I don't think Tucker Carlson should be kicked off the air. And yes, I do think the political discourse needs to be wider than what is allowed in regards to discourse. I think we'll probably get closer to a bit more honesty in regards to our world. And I mean this more so from the standpoint of the left and being able to challenge the likes of Joe Biden. When I'm saying pushing the political discourse, I mean bringing in conversation about, well, hey, is it possible that the fact that we've been toppling the governments in South America, does that have anything to do with the people coming here because their country are basket cases? Yes, I want that political discourse added into the conversation. I think that gets us closer to the truth and honesty if we're really trying to get anything accomplished. By the same token, you will also get the Santorums of the world saying what he just said, or saying what he's about to say. That's the point that I'm making is no, Santorum should not be kicked off the air. If you want to rake him over the coals for saying something stupid, do so. But can we get away from this nonsense of, we should be taking this person off the air because I don't like what the person said? Great. I disagree with what Santorum is saying here. Let's play the clip.
If you think about this country, I don't know of any other country in the world that was settled predominantly by people who were coming to practice their faith. They came here because they were not allowed to practice their particular faith in their own country. And so they came here mostly from Europe, and they set up a country that was based on Judeo-Christian principles. If you think of other countries like Italy and Greece and China and Turkey and places like that, they've all sort of changed over time. I mean, they've been there for millennia in many cases. And their culture has sort of evolved over time. But not us. We came here and created a blank slate. We birthed a nation from nothing. I mean, there's nothing here. I mean, yes, we have Native Americans, but candidly, that there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
And that's what set people off. There isn't much Native American culture left in America. Now, as someone who has a grandfather that is a Native American, see, I wasn't raised that way. Like, my grandfather was half Cherokee, but we weren't, it's like we knew it, but we weren't raised there. And so the feeling thing is not there per se with hearing him say stuff like this. I look at this more of an intellectual thing and think, well, yeah, on one part, you murdered all of the Native Americans. So, yeah, let's not just thump that. But on the other part of it, it's also not really true. There are elements of Native American heritage. And again, I make the point that even the structure of our government on some level takes some pull away from Native American tradition and the way that the Iroquois organize their government. More on point, every nation is birthed at some point. Let me be clear. Every nation is birthed at some point. That's like having a room full of people who are, let's say, in their 50s, and then you have a baby born, and it was like, this baby is birthed from something different than the 50-year-old people that are here. That's a factor of time. That's it. The U.S. came up later than some of the other nations. I don't know what that gets you in regards to good, bad, or anything in between. I guess the point that you're trying to make here is something of special or uniqueness. And I'm making the point that it's not that unique in the context of countries are all birthed at some point. I mean, that's like the Russian Revolution, right? That was birthed at some point. This was something distinct, something unique, but that is not necessarily something that I would imagine a Santorum would consider to be positive. Rick Santorum is a CNN contributor. This statement created right much heat. And I want to show you what and how CNN dealt with this. And Don Lemon is going to absolutely tear into Rick Santorum in a way that, again, on some level, I don't understand why Don Lemon is getting this emotionally wrapped into some of the stuff. Nevertheless, there you are. Let's have some fun. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content, please like, share, and subscribe. You can always support this content through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you, and I appreciate you allowing me to do it. Let's go to, first, Rick Santorum having to face Chris Cuomo. Explain yourself, Rick. Why did you say those things? Why did you say those things? You made Don Lemon. You almost made him cry. Why did you say those things, Rick?
Rick, two problems. One, it's not accurate. There is a lot of affect from the native culture on America.
Absolutely.
And there are a lot of people here who believe in that. And this seemed like you were trying to erase diversity in the interest of some white Christian right.
No. What, just to be clear, what I was not saying is that Native American culture. I misspoke. I was saying what I was talking about is, as you can see from the run-up, I was talking about the founding of our country. I'd given a long talk about the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and the ideas behind those, and and I was saying we sort of created that anew, if you will, and I was not trying to dismiss Native Americans. In fact, I mentioned them because, yes, they were here and they did have an impact. In fact, in this country, you're right. They have a huge impact, particularly in the West and many other areas of the country where they have a huge impact on American culture. I was talking about, and I misspoke in this respect, I was talking about the founding and the principles embodied in the founding. I would never, and people have said, oh, I'm trying to, dismiss what we did to the Native Americans. Far from it. The way we treated Native Americans was horrific. It goes against every bone and everything I've ever fought for as a leader in the Congress. I believe, as our founding document says, that we are endowed by a Creator with unalienable rights and that we are all equal. And when we treat people as other or less than human, that's when every country gets into problem. We did it with the Native Americans. We did it with respect to African Americans. I believe we're doing it with children in the womb today. So this is very personal and very passionate that we can't treat people as different or other, and we get into a lot of problems. So I wasn't saying any of the things that the social media world is saying that I was saying. I was simply talking about the founding documents of the United States, not the colonies, but
I don't know. I don't know what social media was saying. I do know what you said. I do know what people heard you say. And, there's a few points here. I mean, in defending himself, he kind of falls into a few other things. Every man is endowed with, at birth by his Creator with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I guess the point here is that those were explicitly the things that it was taking from somebody else in order to give to its own people. So it didn't even necessarily live up to the ideals, even in the founding of the document itself. And so Rick goes into this argument, basically, look, I totally believe that, and I totally just misspoke. And then he further says that what happens to Native Americans, meaning the genocide, what happened to African Americans, is similar to what is happening in the womb today. Is he talking about abortion? Like, are you really comparing, in your defense, what was being said for the Native Americans? And look, some people consider it offensive. I don't have any feelings about it as offensive. I think it's just a ridiculous statement. He was playing to his base. But more importantly, though, the kid thing is weird. Slavery, the subjugation of millions of people for over hundreds of years, and genocide of the Native American population that had basically established itself throughout the United States, and killing, raping, pillaging, giving disease blankets to wipe out the population using disease as a weapon, and putting into these little areas and enclaves literal genocide is akin to the womb. I mean, let me make sure I'm hearing this right. Let's start right here.
With unalienable rights and that we are all equal. And when we treat people as other or less than human. That's when that's when every country gets into a problem. We did it with the Native Americans. We did it with respect to African Americans. I believe we're doing it with children in the womb today. So this is very personal and very passionate that we can't treat people as different or.
That's exactly what he says. I'm sorry, I was reading the bottom. And it's exactly what he says. I believe that's what we're doing in the womb today, to children in the womb today. That is worse than the Native American statement. That is worse than the Native American statement. In fact, a video could have been done just on that. I mean, are you really going to compare? Like, honest to God, 3 a.m. between you and your God. Are you really going to compare the wiping out of an entire civilization, Native Americans, bloody, vicious, vindictive, the trail of tears, the killing that took place, the raping and pillaging of the women and the destruction of the land and theft of that land, the breaking of the contracts that were made with the Native Americans after already stealing, killing that to take that land. You believe that by itself, let's not even bring in slavery. You believe that a mother making the choice that they're not going to have a kid because it is not in their financial interests to have that kid is part and parcel to the same level of genocide. Are you insane? Are you insane? Like CNN, look, I've already said I don't think they should take him off as a contributor, but he's a nutcase. He's a nutcase. Even if you are for or against abortion, even if you say, I don't think abortion should, fair enough. Are you really going to tell me that abortion is similar and almost on the same level of genocide? Or, the second point, slavery. Slavery. Rick Santorum is a lunatic. He's a nutcase. Don Lemon hears what he's saying here and goes apoplectic. Let's hear Don.
Right now, because you know the person you need to be saying that and who needs to hear it is Rick Santorum. I was furious watching the interview in my office. I cannot believe the first words out of his mouth weren't, I'm sorry, I said something ignorant, I need to learn about the history of this country. No contrition, didn't talk about, the suffering that Native Americans have had to deal with in this country. It was, Rick Santorum, really? Did he actually think it was a good idea for him to come on television and try to whitewash the whitewash that he whitewashed? It was horrible. It was horrible and insulting, and I apologize to the viewers who were insulted by it because I was sitting in my office furious because he's done it so many times. And it's just, I'm sorry, it was so egregious and insulting, and everything that we talk about the founding of this country, Europeans did not found this country. It was here. The Native Americans had this country before the Europeans came. Yeah, the Europeans conquered the country, they colonized it, but they didn't. It had nothing to do with the founding of this country. And he should recognize that. He needs to know that, especially if he's going to be on television representing us and talking about it. He should be doing it from the right perspective and not from some perspective about how, what Europeans. No, that's the wrong way to look at it.
Don, I hate to tell you this, but people can have different perspectives. That is allowed. And I'm a little disturbed that you believe that the only people who can be aired on CNN are people with the right perspectives. I am okay with Santorum being on CNN because hopefully there's somebody opposing Santorum to tell Santorum that he's full of shit. And to do so in front of a large number of people, potentially people already with point of view of Santorum, who may get a little bit of information in their head thinking to themselves, hey, that guy's right, he is full of shit. That never happens if he's in his own bubble and if those people are in their own bubble with him. He says ridiculous things, yes, but you can make an argument that the founding of the country was done by the people because a country is not a real thing. A country is a fictitious legal device of sorts. The landmass was here, yes. There were people on that landmass, yes. Did they have a country named America? No. There are ways to look at it. And it's a conversation that can be had, but I got to be honest, I don't even think Don Lemon can stand here and have a conversation without losing his shit about it. And so, yes, Don, I get it. You're right. Rick Santorum is a lunatic and has a screw loose. By the same token, you're wrong. That is a perspective that should be aired, and he should get to be able to make his point and to make his say. And you should be able to get to make your point and say. And that's how dialogue happens. That's how conversation happens. And the arguments often are not for the people who are having them. Oftentimes those people are locked in their mindsets. It's for the people who are watching them, who would have a point of view that may be on one side or the other or in between, and end up with some level of nuance or some level of change in their tenor and perspective, or at the very least knowing what the other side is. I get the strong feeling from the standpoint of a CNN or an MSNBC or even a Fox News, that are less so a Fox News, but you need to have a perspective in order to function in our political space, in our media space. And I'm saying that is not effective. Yes, Santorum is a screw loose. No, that shouldn't stop him from being on the show. Like, share, and subscribe.